Inkululeko. Thank you for tuning in and sharing your time with us today. I'm Danielle Gervasio. I'm the Public Relations and Outreach Coordinator for Inkululeko.
Hi everyone, my name is
Hi.
and I am a summer intern at Inkululeko.
Amazing.
Nice
So
to meet
before
you.
So before we introduce our lovely achieved guest, we're just going to give you a little context behind our video podcast today. We wanted to create a space where we can highlight and bolster Black voices in order to better support equity, both within education and also just in the world as well. And we want to disseminate the thoughts of those professionals in a safe space so that their achievements can be highlighted. So, a recap of last episode. We had the lovely Taylor Battle here, and she discussed how policy can be utilized in order to bolster the position of Black people in the U.S. And create equity to systemic issues, primarily in response to recidivism in D.C. And that was a wonderful episode and sort of a great transition into what we're going to talk about with Brenda today. So I'll hand it over to Teresa to introduce her.
Hi, so today we are so lucky to have Brenda Edwards with us. And Brenda received her Bachelor's of Science with a concentration in Human Development and Psychology at Empire State College. She also has an advanced certificate in Child and Family Advocacy at Empire State School for Graduate Studies. And she's currently doing her Master's in Liberal Arts Studies with the focus on post-traumatic growth. Brenda was an educator in the New York City Department of Education, primarily studying with students in special education and students with emotional disabilities. She's a group teacher in the early intervention centers in the South Bronx. Brenda was also a third grade teacher at the Modern School of Black Independent School in Harlem. She's a family worker at Community Life Head Start programs in Harlem, a consultant with Mount Sinai's Heart to Heart program, and last but not least, she is an amazing mother and grandma.
Thank you.
So just to get started, Brenda, with our first question, just a little bit of a background. How did you get to where you are today, and how has your identity influenced your journey?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for having me today. I feel quite honored. So how I got started on the journey was just believing that there is a mission here on earth. And in terms of working with individuals on a one-to-one basis, I've always felt as if it was important to make a contribution to someone's life. In terms of my identity, I've always felt as if, the Black experience was just very important to my soul. I remember just adamantly wanting to wear a natural when I was in the 6th grade, and I haven't done anything since. So it's almost like an innate feeling that, the culture of, the richness of the culture led me to just dig deeper into myself. And it always came back to service. What can I do to help others to find their identity?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brenda. I think that really attests to, if you really enjoy your work, it's because it's part of who you are, and it really shows, and attests to the great work that you do. So that's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So for our viewers, as aforementioned, there are countless studies that say either Black students are overrepresented in special education, meaning that they are more likely to be identified as being differently abled. However, actually, yesterday I read another report just about challenging that very idea, and that Black students are actually underrepresented in special education. So those are two sort of conflicting studies. Either way you swing it, those both show equity flaws huge equity flaws in the education system. So Brenda, we're wondering, can you tell us about the important work that you do with the New York City Department of Education, and how it is addressing systemic racial inequity, especially in the work that you do with students in special education?
Okay, so I've been an educator with the Department of Ed for 15 years, primarily working with the special education department. One thing that I've noticed is that working one-to-one with the individuals, you have to know their narrative. It's very important to know their narrative. And on a daily basis, in terms of just their activities, you never really have an opportunity to take the time to figure out why they are the way they are, or what they really know. So I think the educational department focuses more on building the intellect as opposed to the entire child, not realizing that, if you focus on the entire child, you will find a very intellectual individual that dwells within most of the time the worst behaved child. So what I find also is that because so many students come from families that, just in terms of economic disparities, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the tools, they don't have tutoring. A lot of them come from households where their parents aren't tech savvy, or they don't know how to do the new math or the literacy, the Common Core literacy and things like that. So what happens is that the parents depend solely on the teachers to do that, not necessarily realizing that the teachers don't have that much time in the day to do it. Also, what I find is that the Department of Education doesn't really pay attention to why a child has, continues to have emotional outbursts, or continue to not be able to learn as fast as the curriculum wants them to learn. And then what happens is that they constantly push them forward due to social promotion. They push them forward, and they end up in another grade, the following grade, not really having the foundations of what they received before. And this is a situation where everybody sort of knows that. The teacher knows it, administration knows it, it shows in the records, but they're constantly moving our children ahead.
Absolutely. I think that throughout the podcast, throughout the all of the episodes that we've had with our wonderful guests, there's sort of a common thread throughout all of them in terms of all of these confounding factors that don't lead up to equity. So it's not just, last episode we talked to Taylor, and she was talking about, it's not just violence, it's all of these things, housing, it's mental health resources, it's all of these things that really add up to inequitable education, or what have you, whatever sector you're in, health maybe. And so I totally understand, and thank you so much for that insight. I think it's very important stuff, definitely. So we did want to also talk about self-care, because as aforementioned in other episodes, I believe self-care is a super, super strong form of protest. And so can you tell us both about your studies and your work in post-traumatic growth? How can we as regular citizens sort of help your work with the city? What can we do also?
Well, the bottom line is just dare to be yourself. You know what I mean? Dare to take risk. Dare to confront any issue that you're confronted with fearlessly. Educate yourself. Don't, talk yourself off the ledge when necessary. And then also have a good friend, someone that you can depend on. Don't suppress whatever it is that you're going through. I find that what post-traumatic growth, what happened is that, well, in terms of me focusing now on liberal studies as opposed to social and public policy, basically at this point in my life, I chose that route because I wanted to integrate my life. And I find that what has gotten me as far as where I am now is post-traumatic growth. I mean, going through situation after situation after situation, and then seeing other people, whether it's in my school, co-workers, friends, family members, go through situations where we literally had to pick ourselves up off of the floor that we're on, crying, and brush yourself off, listen to that voice inside of yourself, and keep it moving. So it's just very important and there's no one set way for society to do it. It's about being fair. That's the number one thing. Everybody has to be fair. It seems like that's not going to happen anytime soon, but it's keeping hope alive, looking at individuals not as black, brown, white, which is another thing that's going to be very difficult to do, but as human beings, as a contributor to mankind, as an evolutionary, everybody has to dig deep within themselves from the top up to the bottom down. I mean, it's a self-transformation kind of a mission that has to go on in order for us to even help each other, because that's the bottom line. We have to help each other. Everybody has to customize their own narrative, relate that narrative to another individual. If it's one person that can pull another person up, eventually we'll all be pulling each other up.
Yeah, I think that that's a really, that is literally the basis of being a human, right? Is helping others. And I think that is like unfounded nowadays, I think. And we always question, like, how hard is it to support others, not just the ones that you love, but others that are struggling. And so I think that's a really great message. Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of go along that same theme for that question, you mentioned to us how you often have discussions with parents or guardians and students about how to navigate a system that is set up to allow some children to fail and what to look out for. So do you have a message for all those parents or guardians, and especially students of color who don't feel like they have the support in navigating the education system, and kind of what can they look out for along their process and journey?
Okay. What I would tell the parents to do is educate yourself. I don't care what level of education you're at. It's never too late to educate yourself. Go to the library, learn, literacy, math. There's a lot of free courses happening in the library. Get involved with your child's school so that you can know what's working for your child and so that you can know what's not working for your child. Another very important thing is having discussions with your child at that kitchen table, on the rug in the living room, just daily conversations about who they are, their morality, their manners. What is it that constantly asking child, what is it that you want to do? What kind of a contribution do you want to make to society? And I think that once that's embedded in a child and they're constantly thinking about moving forward, they will eventually bring that into the classroom. Because in the classroom is not going to give the Department of Education or the typical school is not going to give an individual that life-sustaining energy that they need to even go on to higher education. It starts in the family. It starts with that individual that's going to plant those seeds inside the child. So I would tell parents, have conversations with your child from the top before they're even able to talk. Talk to them while they're asleep. because it's almost like you have to work a magical kind of thing on people now, because there's so many things going on. You have to subliminally deal with individuals now. So and then I would tell them, never give up. Children of color, one thing I tell my students, I say, don't feel as if you're a victim. You see a lot of things going on, racial, you see, Black Lives Matter, you see the whole movement taking place. That can be you. That could have been my son. That could have been my husband. It could have been my brother. My thing is, don't see yourself as a victim. See yourself as someone being victimized, because you have a long history of greatness. You are you have a history of inventing. You have a history of music, sports. There's so much greatness there. So the bottom line is that you can be that. Right now, what we're seeing is a situation that's trying to, I believe, have people forget that and to just, go straight into victim mode. But what I'm proud of is that the youth that are coming up today, they have friends of mixed cultures. They have white friends, brown friends, Mexican, Indian. It's a diverse population. And also they're coming into relationships. They're having children now. So, like we're blending. We're really blending. So the most important thing I would say to parents, start taking your lives seriously, because that within itself, when you're taking yourself seriously, you're going to take every single thing about your child seriously.
I agree with that. Especially, I'm not a parent myself, but I know that erasure in general is something that a lot of cultures fear, right? Especially when you're coming into the U.S. and there's so much blending, but it also could be a beautiful thing, right? Hopefully you're not erasing it, but you're blending it, and you're making it beautiful, right? And I did want to say something about the point you made about sort of getting educated as a parent. I think that's really interesting, especially because in the age of COVID, right, we don't know how long we're going to be in this pandemic. Parents are being teachers right now. So and they're trying to help their children as best as they can. So taking that time also to sort of blend, right, and sort of like to you know give that sort of attention to their children while they're learning is like something beautiful, and sort of like a blessing in disguise with all of the awful things that COVID has done to our world right now. But I think that's a great, like a really, really good point, and I think a really good transition. Yeah, so we always love to wrap up our podcasts and all of our episodes with sort of a message of hope. And so we want to ask you if there's ever been a time in your personal or professional development where you felt unsuccessful. How did you move past that? Where did you find inspiration? Where did you find motivation or passion? Just for a message of hope for our viewers and listeners.
Well, I would say there were times where I never got to the point of feeling unsuccessful, only because there was so many times when I didn't know if I was going to be successful. And when I felt, situations that I've been in wherein I felt that I would not be successful, how am I going to do this? How am I going to raise my child? How am I going to get past the situation with my daughter, with her fabulous specialness and all of that? Like, so there was always, I didn't know how I would succeed. And in knowing in that within itself made me dig deep into myself. I mean, I keep bringing that up because it's like digging deep, that has been my salvation. You know what I mean? I really feel that has saved my life so many times. So, when I what would happen is that I have a tendency to talk myself through a situation. My advice would be, and what has saved me, I feel, as talking myself through the situation, listening to that voice within that has never, ever forsaken me, that stilling myself, instead of going into a frenzy when I'm feeling like I can't do this, the first thing I do is I try to still myself. I'm not going to say I'll meditate or, zen out. Indirectly, that is what I'm doing, but I still myself and I just say, a prayer. I sing a song, but it's very quiet. It's quietness, and that's what gets me to, then I receive the information. Okay, this is how you'll do it. So I'll write it down. I'll write down what I'm hearing, because I feel as if you write down if you listen, you're being spoken to. You're being spoken to on another level. So I'll write it down, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like. Sometimes there's words that I really might not understand. Because it's not really a word, it's an energy. And then I'll go through that, and just going through that whole ritual sort of centers me.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that ending. I think this is one of my favorite endings. I think that also that's something we learn as we grow. Because when you're young, it's always like fast, 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 react. You need to react now, like quick with the quickness, and like I think as you grow and you learn more things about yourself, it's easier to be comfortable with that stillness and actually breathe. And throughout my years, I feel like breathing has really helped me too when I'm in stressful situations, for sure. So thank you for that last inspiring message. It's really hopeful, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers will love that. So thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
So that's all for now. We will continue these engagements, of course, throughout the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Brenda, for sharing your time with us. Time is such an important resource, so thank you so much.
Thank you all very much as well. Stay safe.
Yes, you too. From all of us at Inkululeko, thank you for watching. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.